Welcome to Canadian Justice. I'm Christine Van Geyn. Today we're discussing psychedelic drugs and their potential therapeutic uses and how their medical potential butts up against Canada's legal and regulatory regime. Psychedelic drugs include psilocybin, ketamine, and MDMA. MDMA was largely known as a dance or party drug for raves because of its mood enhancing properties, but its recreational use led it to being placed on the Schedule 3 of the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act in Canada. But the drug has interesting possible therapeutic uses. In 2019, the US FDA granted a breakthrough therapy designation to MDMA, assisted psychotherapy, for the treatment of post traumatic stress disorder, as well as for psilocybin for the treatment of major depressive disorder. What is the status of these drugs in Canada, and how do we balance recreational abuse of this drug with research and therapeutic breakthroughs for incredibly difficult to treat mental illnesses? Here today to discuss this is Nick Kadysh, the CEO of Pharmala, a biotech company, and we're also joined by Gary Hess, a U.S. Marine veteran of 11 years who was hit by a truck filled with explosives while serving in Iraq. He went on to found the Veterans Alliance for Holistic Alternatives. Thank you both so much for joining me today. Gary, let me start with you. First of all, thank you for your service. Next, can you tell me about your story? What happened in your military service and what was life like after?
Yeah, so very quick, I grew up in a very conservative South, and if I even said the word psychedelics in my household, my father would be discipline me in a very harsh way. So I joined the service, both enlisted and as an officer. Served as an infantry officer during the heaviest levels of fighting in Iraq, and one of the culminating incidents was the day after Christmas in 2006. They drove a full-size triaxle dump truck loaded with C4 into the house we were occupying. And that was the beginning of the end of my service. And but what I didn't realize was that the toughest journey was yet to come. And so I turned my hands over to the Western model of medicine, and it was pharmaceuticals and surgeries and traditional talk therapies. And at the end of a decade, the best answer was taking my own life. And it eventually came to the point where I was out of options, and I'm here today because psychedelic assisted therapies have saved my life.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that you are here today, and I'm glad to hear that you are doing a lot better. How did you start your investigation into these alternative psychedelic drugs, these alternatives to traditional pharmaceuticals? What was your experience like with them?
Yeah, so for me, the intentional work um, started with cannabis. It was at the point where I was absolutely out of options, and because another Marine, one of my scout snipers that I served with, he ridded himself off of the pills, the opioids, utilizing cannabis. And so he brought it to me one day, and it was very difficult, even a very difficult conversation for me to have. But I was desperate. My family had broken down. I lost my business. My houses were in foreclosure. Right, life was crumbling, and so the intentional use of cannabis allowed me to manage the state of chronic stress. But it got to a point over the course of about 3 years where I was still being triggered, and I knew there were things that were still deep that I could not get to, and that's when I tried my first psychedelic assisted therapy experience, and it was psilocybin and bufo alvarius, and it gave me the rest of the answers that I was looking for. And I have since then committed my life to providing access to others in need who are also out of options. And so to date, I've sat with psilocybin, 5-MeO DMT, MDMA, ketamine, ibogaine, ayahuasca, wachuma, you name it, all with therapeutic intention to see how these medicines were working with my body and how it allowed me to work through the mechanics of that trauma and get to a point where my body could actually accept bliss and joy and happiness. And it's been a journey. It's been a journey, but I found the answers that I'm looking for. And now I spend the rest of my life advocating for others in need.
Well, what an incredible story. And having served the country, it's so important that the country is able to create a system that is going to work for you. And that wouldn't be possible without the advocacy that you're doing. I'm really interested to hear more about this. We've got to go to break though, so we will continue this when we come back.